Right now, Hurricane Irma bearing down on the Florida Panhandle. This monster of a storm leaving a path of destruction all throughout the Caribbean. Now it's taking aim at Florida.
This is your last chance to make a good decision.
Florida Governor Rick Scott urging residents to evacuate before it's too late.
We could see millions of people without power in Florida for multiple days, and in some areas, maybe weeks.
But for some people, it might already be too late, now being forced to hunker down and try to ride out this storm safely. We've got team coverage for you this morning, including live reports from Florida as Irma makes its impact felt this morning. The Fox 61 Morning News starts right now. Good morning, everybody. We begin this Sunday morning tracking Hurricane Irma. Thank you for watching the Fox 61 Morning News. I'm Ben Goldman. We've been watching Hurricane Irma all throughout the night and into the early hours this morning. Take a look at this. This was the scene just hours ago along the beachfront down in Miami as heavy wind and rain begin to tear through southern Florida. Hundreds of thousands are said to be without power this morning, and that number likely only to go up over the course of the day. We've got team coverage for you this morning. Both meteorologists, Sam Samperi and Mr. Matt Scott, tracking everything you need to know about this hurricane. Good morning to both of you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
This is one of those days where we are actually grateful that we don't have much to worry about around here.
That's
so
right,
all
Matt.
our attention is focused mainly down to the south. This is a storm for the ages in size, in magnitude, and because of the size and magnitude, nobody in Florida is likely to be spared from this storm.
That's right. This is going to be a record breaker. This is a monster of a hurricane, and just because it's going up the west coast, that's actually worse going up the west coast than the east coast. Because Florida Peninsula is fairly narrow, the whole state is really going to get clobbered, with the western areas getting really the brunt of it. And so right now, we're just about ready to hit Key West. And let's take a look at the latest information. Right now, Irma maximum sustained winds at 130 miles per hour. Winds northwest at 8 miles per hour. Central pressure down a bit, 929. So it's actually intensified because it's now in the warmer waters. But Matt will get to that in a second. He'll have more details on that in a minute. As I take a look at our local weather this morning, again, we are very lucky. We do not have any problems here across the region. We have temperatures in the 40s and lower 50s this morning, 48 Norfolk, 51 Hartford, 47 Meriden. Pretty much typical weather here across the region. We don't have any problems. We have high pressure in control, just a few fair weather clouds coming in this afternoon. You can see maps in motion, no weather problems at all. So for today, look for temperatures again in the low 70s. Beautiful afternoon, beautiful fall colors starting to take shape. Sundown at 7:09. Now Matt will take over and he'll talk more about Hurricane Irma.
And Irma behaving for the most part over the last couple of hours. We really haven't expected much of a change in its size or intensity. We had one thing that went in the favor of kind of breaking up Irma. Irma yesterday spending just a little bit of time right along the mountainous regions of Cuba, kind of sheared off a little bit of its energy, but in the warm waters of the Florida Straits, right back up to a Category 4 status, and as you can see where the eye is, still impressive looking, just now getting ready to bear down on Key West. We showed you the stats, again, moving to the northwest at 8 miles an hour, and the problem is, because Irma has now moved off towards the west, we've been talking about this all week, that the northeastern quadrant of a massive storm like this is where you find the worst of the storm. So as it moves, just kind of skirts up the west coast, it doesn't mean that Miami, Fort Lauderdale, Palm Beach in the clear. As a matter of fact, Broward and Dade, Miami-Dade County receiving all night long numerous tornado warnings from feeder bands spinning off from this storm. The other problem is the storm surge, which is really an issue for both coasts as we're looking for just practically a wall of water that goes everywhere from looking at 6 to 12 feet in Tampa, 10 to 15 feet in the Florida Keys, and on the eastern coast, a little less, but still catastrophic damage potential there. Show you one more map as we walk on over to the wall, and you'll see that we have hurricane force winds already being felt in Key West. Again, I'd say about 2 to 3 hours away from landfall, first landfall, we should say, Ben, in the Keys. And then it'll kind of skirt right up the west coast, Marco Island, Sarasota, up until Tampa. We think around Tampa there may be a secondary landfall. All in all, we don't see the storm weakening anytime soon.
So be heed and stay clear of those warnings and alerts. You'll be keeping us up to date all morning
long. That's
long.
right. And not only do we have the full team coverage here, but it actually continues down south in Florida, right?
Yes, it does. Speaking of that team coverage, it is continuing in the path of Irma as it moves up, like Matt said, from the Caribbean, making landfall on the continental United States. Fox 61's Lorenzo Hall live in Kissimmee, Florida this morning. Lorenzo, good morning to you.
Hey, good morning, Ben and Matt. Yeah, we are here in Kissimmee, Florida, and I feel a little bad after looking at some of those images coming out of Miami as well as Key West this morning, because we are not seeing the same weather here. Just a light drizzle, as you can see. Now, typically Sunday morning, you don't expect a lot of businesses to be open, but here along 192 in Kissimmee, a lot of tourists frequent this area, so many businesses stay open 24 hours. As of right now, the only thing open is this Waffle House, and they say they plan to stay open during the storm. They have no plans on leaving. Talked with the workers inside. They say this is no big deal. They can weather this storm. However, the folks, their neighbors, this gas station here at this racetrack, they typically stay open 24 hours as well, along with the Waffle House workers. Not today. You see a lot of these out-of-service bags over the gas handles. They're all closed up. They actually closed up roughly 5 o'clock yesterday, along with many of the other businesses in town, including the Orlando airport not too far away. So the folks here listening to that governor's warning, he wanted everyone off the roads today, saying yesterday was your last day to prepare. But again, not too bad here this morning, just a light drizzle. We haven't felt those strong winds as of yet. However, that is expected to change later on in the day. Ben, Matt?
Lorenzo, you said it's awfully quiet over there, but that's because folks are still, even at this early Sunday morning hour, the last stragglers who made the last-minute decision to evacuate South Florida, they're moving up to your location. You're close to
Yes.
Orlando.
Right.
What have you been seeing from the last folks that have been moving in over the last few?
Yeah, even people from Tampa, Matt, are making their way to Orlando now. They opened a few more shelters in Orlando yesterday. We talked with some people outside of those shelters because actually, let me mention as well, a couple here in that Waffle House, that they came here from West Palm because they thought being here in the center of the state would be the safest. The woman said you cannot outrun a storm. The people in Tampa thought they were safe, but now that Irma is making its way up that end of the Florida coast, those people are now staying here in Orlando, or here in Kissimmee as well as Orlando. Matt?
And Lorenzo, I'm going to take it here. I have a question for you. You're at a gas station. That's a limited resource. What are people doing as that runs out?
Oh, like the governor said, Ben, if you didn't prepare yesterday, you're pretty much out of luck at this point. A lot of these businesses will remain closed throughout the day. We were, in fact, trying to fill up our tanks with gas yesterday. We saw a couple open earlier in the morning, but by the time we drove by again, roughly 2-3 p.m., they were all closed. So at this point, if you're not filled up, you're pretty much out of luck.
We should point out that the reason that things are so quiet for Lorenzo right now is because the brunt of the storm hasn't made it up yet. And that's kind of one of the real issues with Irma. Usually you see a hurricane, it kind of comes across at some portion of the Florida Peninsula. This one's slicing right up the middle. So it's almost, dare we say, Lorenzo, beelining for you, staying a little farther to the west, but you're going to be on the wrong side of the storm. So we suspect in about 6 to 12 hours, it's going to be a much different scene for you.
Oh, yeah, we're expecting a much different scene, but talking to the people here, they'll tell you a different story. We're hearing about tropical storm force winds a little later this afternoon, then, of course, elevating to those hurricane force winds overnight, early into Monday morning. But, hey, some people, they're staying in their homes. You have a lot of tourists here in town who are visiting Disney World. Disney is closed today, but some of those people saying they will stay put until the park reopens. They want to get their chance to go to some of those Disney parks. So they're not expecting this to be bad at all. But when I hear hurricane force winds, I'm expecting the absolute worst.
Florida folks are used to seeing different levels of hurricanes. So you
were there.
They kind of know how to gauge it. But, conversely, up here, a tropical storm could do, near catastrophic damage. Look at what Irene did a couple of years ago. Disney, Universal Studios, all the other parks, they're closed. But the folks in the hotels they're hunkered down. And Disney, all the parks are going to do what they can to accommodate those guests and take care of them.
There's no getting out.
They are in the happiest place on earth. Without the rides these days.
And let me tell you, Matt and Ben, really quickly, a lot of the hotels and resorts here, they are giving out those instructions to their guests. When we checked into our hotel, They gave us a sheet letting us know, hey, here are some of the things you can do during the storm. This is not a storm shelter. They reiterated that. We're not sure that these hotels and resorts can withstand hurricane force winds, but they're saying obviously you're not going to be on the street during that storm. But if you don't feel safe, they're urging those people to perhaps go to one of the shelters as well. A lot of the buildings here in Florida, they are, because of a new building code after Andrew in '92, they are built to withstand those hurricane force winds. So a lot of the schools here, public facilities, they're urging people to go there if they don't feel safe in their hotels.
This is, as I said, this is a storm that's not going to miss sparing much of the Florida peninsula. So even Lorenzo, smack dab in the middle of the state in Orlando in central Florida, going to get a good chunk of the energy, especially later on. So Lorenzo, we'll talk to you in a couple minutes. Stay safe and stay fed, as it's relatively quiet before you actually go through the thick of it.
Lorenzo, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Stay safe. And of course, you can expect more continuing coverage as we track Hurricane Irma and its impact down south. You can follow along with Lorenzo and everything going on in Florida on air, online, on our Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram pages, and of course, on the free Fox 61 News app as well. With Irma making its presence known in the state of Florida, many residents are getting out of harm's way. But for those who chose to stay and run the risk, they say they're terrified of what could come. For others, it's even harder, being hundreds of miles away from family and loved ones. Two Quinnipiac University students here in Connecticut and Florida natives spoke with our Carmen Chow last night, and they say they're concerned for their families dealing with this disaster.
It's definitely really scary just because I'm not there firsthand, so I can only see through social media or what my dad tells me what's going on. So
I know a lot of my friends are extremely nervous, but some people think, because they've been through it before, that, we already know what it's going to be like type of thing.
Some Connecticut colleges and universities, including UConn, have reached out to students in the area in the path of Irma, offering both counseling and support during this difficult time. Still to come here on the Fox 61 Morning News, a busy morning, much more on Hurricane Irma coverage. We'll hear from Florida's Governor Rick Scott about the mandatory evacuations in place for residents.